Right, so my Twizy is coming up to 4 years old, so it's time to change the brake fluid. I've decided I'm not going to kind of pay Renault to service the Twizy for a couple of reasons. One, every time I speak to Renault and the local dealerships anyway, they have no idea what Renault Twizy is, let alone kind of what needs to be done to it. I spoke to them, they said about, oh well, standard service, oil filter change, blah 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 blah. Tried to explain it's an electric vehicle, there's no oil filter. But they didn't seem to get it, and also the closest Renault dealer to me is kind of at the limit of the Twizy's range, so I've decided, got some relative competence, so I will kind of maintain things myself. I already did a video previously on kind of doing some maintenance on the rubbing brake discs as well as changing the clutch fluid. So just do a quick video to walk you guys through kind of what you need and how to change the brake fluid in your Renault Twizy. Okay, so as mentioned, it's typically recommended that every 4 years you want to change the brake fluid on your vehicle. Now there's a couple of reasons for this. One is just over time, if you're doing lots of mileage and excessive use, the brake fluid kind of density will break down over time. And also if you don't do lots of mileage, like probably typical in your Twizy, they can kind of get water elements that will impact the brake fluid consistency, which obviously impacts the braking. And depending on what's happened and how it's been maintained over the years, you may also get some air in there as well, which obviously will kind of affect the pedal sensitivity and everything. So that's why we're going to do this. It should take you about half an hour. Maybe a little bit longer if you run into a couple of issues, which we'll talk about as we go through. I've already done the fluid change on my Twizy last night, and so I'm just going to talk you through the process quite quickly and hopefully cover all the things you need to do so you're aware of it. So the particular method I like to use, I always use an EZBleeder. So that is what the process I'll be talking you through. I'll put a link to some of the things in the description below if you want to pick them up. So I use an EZBleeder because it's basically super simple. You're going to fill the EZBleeder full up with the brake fluid oil. This is the brake fluid oil that I recommend and meets the requirement that Renault are looking for. It costs you about £9. The EZBleeder I think is about £15. You basically fill up the bottle and then you apply pressure, which we'll talk about in a moment, and then it kind of allows you to bleed and fill up the brake fluid reservoir and kind of minimize any chance of getting air in there. You shouldn't need to use the whole bottle. I did use the whole bottle just because I wanted to completely flush out the system, and I have no plans to keep this for later, because in the kind of 2 years I've had the Twizy, I've never had a need to top this up, and if I do, I'll just buy some more. So obviously you need oil. I recommend an EZBleeder. Also some rag or some cloth or something so you can kind of keep things clean. Maybe also some paper that you can put underneath the wheels, so in case any brake fluid drops off there. You're definitely going to get some brake fluid dropping off near the reservoir when we take things out there. You'll also probably want some form of lubrication, WD-40. I have some GT85 here just to spray around the bleed nipples to make it easy when you're trying to bleed the nipple, because it's probably got loads of crud, dirt and grime on there. I also recommend a small syringe. This is just so when you finish you can remove some of the brake fluid from the reservoir, because it'll probably be above the maximum. And then you need two spanners, an 8mm and a 10mm. 8mm for the front, 10mm for the back. I actually recommend using a socket, especially if in the method I use, I leave the wheels on, so it just makes the job a whole lot easier. So using a socket will make this job a lot easier. So let me just grab some before and after fluids to show you. My Twizy's only done about 4,500 miles, so not super dirty, but it's amazing to see just the difference that it's made in changing over the oil. So this is the difference. So I just used a couple of empty water bottles. So this darker fluid is the original brake fluid that came out of the vehicle, and this is kind of some excess after I finished kind of draining it all through to make sure I had no air in. So Again, not considerably lighter, but lighter enough to show that, you know, it is worthwhile. Also recommend you wear some gloves. I wear these mechanics gloves, just I had them for years, but just wear some latex gloves or something, or worst case even some washing up gloves, just to avoid getting brake fluid on your hands and stuff, because it can be a bit of an irritant. So let's talk through kind of how we remove the front of the Twizy, and then, you know, how you kind of go through this process. Okay, so I'll take my gloves off now, just to make sure that my hands kind of don't blend into any of the paintwork or the parts, just to make it easier for you to understand. So the first thing we need to do is take off the front panel here, the Twizy. If you've not done it before, it's very easy. You just need to be kind of gentle but forceful at the same time. So basically the Twizy is connected in kind of 4 places. There's a kind of connector here, about here, about here. On the other side, it kind of sits into 4 kind of little kind of holsters there. So just need to kind of put your fingers and tuck it underneath, and then give it a little gentle tug, and it'll start to come off. And that's it, just slowly angle it down and it will come out. So just put this to the side somewhere safely so you don't accidentally tread on it later. Okay, so now we have that removed. Should be pretty obvious. This here is the brake fluid reservoir. Mine was already kind of at maximum when I came to change it, and I've obviously filled it back up to around maximum. So if you give it a little gentle wiggle, if you get a torch also you can see, because it is quite difficult to notice it, but mine is at the max. An important thing that we'll talk about when it comes to draining the brake fluid is the order that you do it. So if we look in here, it's quite difficult to see. In there is the brake master cylinder, and so it's best that we bleed furthest away and walk ourselves towards the front. So we will start off, as we look at the car, back right, back left, front right, and then finally front left. So that will ensure that we kind of flush out most of the bad or old fluid right at the beginning, and then we just have some pretty clear fluid running through the final points. That's pretty much all you need to be aware of. When we disconnect this, we can kind of leave it hanging somewhere. You've got a couple of options. You can, this moves quite freely. This is just basically the sensor that senses whether there is fluid in there or not. So if ever you have the service light come up on your Twizy, this may be one of the things that's been sensed. There aren't really many sensors on the Twizy, so it's a good idea to check brake fluid if it's a problem. We can take this off just by unclipping and pulling back. I tend to just leave it on, so it just gives it somewhere to hang. Simply just take this off. It just unscrews very easily, and I recommend getting some paper or some cloth, because the fluid will drip out of this kind of sensor area and it's going to hang around down here somewhere, so you want to kind of protect anything that's going to get brake fluid on, so that you can clean it off quite easily. When you are topping up the brake fluid, you want it to be maybe 5 ml below the max. So that's why you want to have the syringe just kind of syringe a bit out, because once you put this in, it does raise the level slightly. So keep that in mind. I'll put this back on for now and talk you through what you guys are going to be doing. So if you're doing this as you watch the video, you want to have this left off. Then we're going to grab our EZBleed and connect things up there as well. So if you buy the EZBleed kit, it comes with pretty much everything you need. It comes as standard with some tubing that just has this kind of hex bolt on the end, and you need to select which one of the tank lids that you want to use. This one seems to work best with the Twizy. It's one of the larger ones, but with the indents around the outside. Basically, you take obviously the current tank top off, put this on and doing it up. Make sure it's nice and tight. You do have to kind of turn it quite tight on the Twizy, I found, to make sure there was no air locks, air escaping. It also comes with this nice little hanger which you slot on, and then I just decided I could just easily hang this here. It keeps it all in a really good position. So you want to fill this up with your brake fluid to around the top. Don't do that straight away though, we want to do a pressure test first. So you have the bottle empty, connect this up here, and then what we're going to do is connect the other end to one of the tyres of our Twizy. Now it's important to let the pressure down in one of your tyres because you don't want it to be more than around 22 psi. They recommend about 20 psi, but obviously when you're getting this on and off you will lose a little bit. If you have too much pressure in your Twizy tyre when you're doing this, you will cause the fluid to flow too quickly and it's going to overflow and it's going to be a right mess. If that does happen, keep in mind where the fluid's going to go. It's going to flow across the front here and down, and also down to where the brake pedal is as well, so you have a fair bit of mess to clean up, so keep that in mind. So once you've connected this up and you've kind of turned it on without any fluids or anything in there, you'll make sure you can't hear any hissing, so tighten this up as tight as you can so you hear no hissing. Then disconnect the air pressure. Then you'll take the lid off of your EZBleed and fill that up to the top. As we go through this process, I recommend that you use one of the front tyres. I always use the front right, and then basically you're going to come back to the front of the vehicle and clip this on and off so you can keep a good eye on what's happening, because there's a couple of things you don't want to have happen. You don't want the fluid in here to go down below this line, and you do not want the fluid in here ready to go down past the minimal line. If that does happen, then you run the risk of getting air into your system. Not the end of the world if that does happen. It just means it's going to make your life a bit harder because you're going to have to then go back and bleed all the air out of the system, but we will cover that at the end as well. So you will have got to a stage now where you have this full of fluid, this cap on, and now you need to go to the back rear of the car and get things ready for bleeding. Okay, so it's now at this point where I pop around the car quickly and spray a little bit of lube around each of the bleed valves. You can see these really easy at the back as you kind of look straight back down near where the suspension is, little black cover. This will pull off. You can spray a bit of spray around there. The front ones are kind of hidden towards the back of the caliper. If you turn the wheels one way or another, it makes access a little bit easier. Those ones don't come completely off. They kind of have a little hook on them that stops you losing them. So quickly pop round and do that, and then we will start bleeding at the back. Okay, so before we head round to the back of the vehicle, a couple of things we want to take with us: an empty bottle of some sort for the fluid to go into, and then some of these pipes that come with the EZBleed kit. So I take the longest large one and the longest thin one, kind of put them both together because it's going to be the larger end that you want to get onto the bleed nipple. So we're going to connect that up, obviously put the thin end into the bottle so the fluid can drain, and get ourselves all ready. Okay, so at the back of the vehicle now, so as mentioned, you don't need to take the wheels off. This is pretty easy. What we're going to do is we're going to pop our hands down and remove the cap from the bleed valve. This should be nicely lubricated now, so it should be coming out pretty freely. I recommend, especially when you have the wheels on, that we're going to use the socket set. So I have a small socket set which makes things really easy. You can just use the spanner, but there isn't a lot of room in there when you're trying to get around the wheel and the mud guards and everything. But I recommend the socket set. So remember, it's 10mm for the back and 8mm for the front. So all we need to do now is gently undo the bleed valve. You may see a small amount of brake fluid come out. The system isn't under any pressure right now, so you shouldn't have it kind of gushing everywhere. So this kind of makes things a little bit easier. Obviously, just to note, don't have someone jump in the car and put their foot on the brake pedal, because that will apply pressure and then you will have brake fluid coming out. So take that off, apply the end of the pipe, then we will run down the front of the car and connect up the EZBleed to the wheel again, and then we'll start to see the fluid flowing. Okay, so what I recommend here is something kind of set up a bit like this. So we have everything set up. Obviously this connector would be connected up to the header tank, or the brake fluid tank. This is full of the brake fluid. We're getting ready with our valve to put onto our front wheel. We have the pipe coming out of the rear bleed valve into a bottle. You should see no fluid coming out right now, and we will simply connect this to our front tyre, and as soon as the pressure starts coming, you will see that the brake fluid comes out of our bottle and in to the header tank or the brake fluid tank, and it's going to force the brake fluid through the vehicle, all through the pipes, out to that back right, and then the fluid will start coming out into our bottle. We'll keep the pressure applied until one of two things happen. Either this fluid gets below this line, which shouldn't happen with just this back rear wheel, but you will get quite a lot of fluid coming out of there. And you're just going to keep an eye on the bottle and the pipe until you start to see a clearer fluid come through. Then you can be pretty confident that that kind of line has been cleared. Then release the air pressure, the fluid will then stop, pop to the back of the vehicle, remove the pipe, do it up again with the 10mm spanner or your socket set, replace that bleed cover, and you're good. Then just going to keep on repeating this process again, back to the other wheel on the left hand side using that 10mm spanner again. Keep coming back and checking. Make sure that you're removing the pressure whenever you want the fluid to stop, or also when you want to change the fluid in here. You don't want to open this up when it's under pressure, so just stop, take it off, undo the top, put more fluid in, and then good to go again. And when you come to the front wheels, as mentioned, turn the steering wheel left or right to give you slightly easier access. Same process again, but you're using an 8mm plug or socket, and then once everything is bled, then we're kind of almost ready to finish up. Okay, so once the bleeding process is complete, you will have disconnected the valve from the EZBleed. Remember to pump up that tyre again to get the pressure up to what you need. Now that you have no pressure in there, you can remove this cap from the tank here and completely remove your EZBleed. You are finished with that now, and hopefully you agree that was a very easy process. Then you want to do, just grab the syringe that you have handy, syringe out enough fluid that you're, again, just about 5mm below the max line. Put this back in, make sure it's nice and tight, you should be good. And then we will jump into the car, make sure we don't have any service light on, and make sure that the pedal feels nice and responsive. Okay, so as you get back into the Twizy, all we're going to do is just turn the ignition on like we normally would. I want to make sure that that service light goes out. That's what we're looking for. Excellent. So as long as the service light's off, what that means is that the right level of fluid is inside the my words are losing me, inside where the brake fluid tank is, and everything is okay there. Then we just need to check that come on, music, bit of Avicii playing. How do we get to stop? Come on. Right, now all we need to do is just make sure that we've got good pedal movement. So what we don't want is when we push the pedal for it to go all the way through flat to the floor. They should start to kick in about the same kind of height as the accelerator pedal, and we also hear the click that disengages the handbrake. So if I just test that now, okay, if I push down, there's no chance of it going into the floor. So I think that's good. That's a sign that we don't have really any air in the system. If you did get in the car now, and even if the service light was gone off and you put your foot flat to the pedal and it went to the floor, that means that you have air in your system. So let's talk about what you need to do then. Okay, so hopefully everything went okay. If unfortunately you are putting your foot on the pedal and it is kind of going to the floor, that does mean you have somehow got air in your system somehow. Most likely you weren't monitoring this tank well enough and it kind of got below the minimum, and then air got sucked in as it kind of went down. You've been topping it up but you hadn't really noticed. So there's a couple of methods. One of the methods that I'm not necessarily a fan of requires really two people, and you will kind of take your empty bottle and your pipes to each bleed valve, open them up, and then get someone to push the pedal. This will then hopefully get any air out in each of the valves that are kind of close. My preference is just to go again all the way back to the far right bleed valve, open it up, connect the pipes up again, and then we're going to use the EZBleed system again, and you just basically flush a load more fluid all the way back through the system, and the chances are that will get rid of all the air that you had left in the system, and that will kind of make sure that everything was good. then you should check again and you should have the normal brake pedal feel that you're looking for. So that's it. We will just show you how to quickly put the front back on, and then that's it. Your brake fluid change complete. It should have only taken you about 30 minutes if all went according to plan. Okay, so putting the front panel on is really easy. So we got these 4 kind of little clips that this is going to sit in down the bottom here. So 1, 2, 3, 4. We just rest it at an angle into these 4 positions and then gently push up, and it will kind of clip back into place. Start off kind of in the middle, and then the side ones should just naturally find their home. And that's it, brake fluid changed. Hope it helped. This is something you should do every 4 years, so relatively easy and not very costly, and saves you a trip to your Renault garage where they will try and, I don't know, change your engine oil or something. Thanks for watching this video. A thumbs up would be really appreciated. If you're interested in other geek type videos, please consider subscribing to Spectrum Geeks. Why not also follow us on Facebook, Instagram and Twitter. And before you leave, why don't you check out one of these other videos that may be of interest. Thanks again for watching.